Let's begin in the Middle East, where the violence between Israel and Hamas has intensified, with bombs exploding inside of Gaza. Now, the latest reports have more than 100 Palestinians and 3 Israelis killed over the last 6 days. And much of the world is watching to see if the air war escalates to a ground war. President Obama was asked about the situation and made clear that he stands with Israel.
There's no country on earth that would tolerate missiles raining down on its citizens from outside its borders. So we are fully supportive of Israel's right to defend itself from missiles landing on people's homes and workplaces and potentially killing civilians.
Well, quite a few people have been watching what's going on and making some connections, pointing out the vast similarities with what's happening today in that region with what's happened 4 years ago. The similar scenes of the tanks and the bulldozers, oftentimes in the very same regions they were 4 years ago. Not to mention, of course, the timing of this, which is just after the U.S. presidential election and just before the one in Israel. But despite these similarities, there have been some major differences. First and foremost, that this time, the Arab Spring has happened, and policies made by the U.S. have changed the region in a significant way. I'm joined now by RT correspondent Paula Sleer. Paula, let's first talk about the similarities. In many ways, this intensification of air war between Israel and Gaza feels a little like deja vu. Are people in Tel Aviv noticing this?
Certainly people here are noticing this. I mean, you have a throwback here to Operation Cast Lead, which was the name of the Israeli operation back in December 2008. At that time, the stated goal of the Israeli army and the Israeli government was to completely delete the supplies of weaponry that Hamas and other militants in the Gaza Strip have. And we're hearing the same kind of warmongering, the same kind of statements coming out of the Israeli leadership. I think, though, that one significant difference is that for the first time ever, rockets have been aimed at Tel Aviv. They have been successfully intercepted, but this certainly has sent a chill down the backs of many Israelis. There was also a rocket that landed not far from the city of Jerusalem. This happened over the past weekend. It's the first time since 1970 that a missile has reached so far into the country. Now, the analysis essentially is that since that last war, Hamas has been able to stock itself up on long-range Iranian-made missiles. And if anything, this is only going to be more of an incentive for the Israeli government to move ahead with a ground offensive. But again, in terms of what are the similarities, we saw the same 4 years ago, that the operation from the Israeli side started with airstrikes. We've witnessed these airstrikes now for 6 days, and then it ultimately ended in a ground operation. And the indication on the ground, as we see the tanks and armored personnel vehicles move along the Israel-Gaza border, as we see some 75,000 reserve soldiers called up, some 40,000 soldiers stationed in the south of Israel, all indications at this stage are that a ground offensive could be imminent.
Let's talk now about the differences. You, of course, mentioned some of these weapons that have been used by Hamas that are, I guess, for lack of a better word, better, more enhanced, improved. But of course, another difference here is the changing of the guards in Egypt. I know former President Hosni Mubarak had closed off the Rafah crossing in 2008 between Gaza and Egypt. But the new President Mohamed Morsi, has not done so. Talk about what kind of effect this is having, Paula.
Well, Christine, I think that's a significant point to make. I mean, we're looking now at a new Egyptian leadership with the Muslim Brotherhood in power in Cairo. You do essentially have politicians there who have a much closer alliance to the Hamas leadership in Gaza. But having said that, though, they do have a very delicate line to follow. It's a balancing act that on the one hand, they want to be true to their support base. They want to respond to what people on the Egyptian street are saying, and that is to give support to Hamas. But on the other hand, Morsi and his government will not want to alienate the United States. Certainly they receive millions of dollars every year in funding from Washington, and so they'll want to be seen not to be too much in the hands of Hamas, but certainly something more like a middle of the road mediator. It's still questionable whether or not people see them as middle of the road, but certainly they are seen as the most likely mediator in this situation. They have been holding talks throughout the day, Sunday and Monday, with various players. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, is in Cairo, where he has been holding talks. And what we're hearing from both the Israelis and Hamas is that they've put forward their demands. They're expecting that Egypt will address those demands. But you have a situation where both sides are waiting for the other side first to lay down weapons before they say they'll come to the party. And of course, this is something that doesn't bode particularly well for the creation of peace. What we're also hearing from the Israelis, one of their conditions is that the Egyptian-Gaza border at Rafah remain open, while they say they'll close down their border between Israel and Israel and Gaza. And in fact, this border has consistently been closed. That is not something that the former Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak would have done. For instance, he did not keep that border open on his side. He in fact kept it down in alliance and in coordination with the Israelis. So certainly the game plan has changed on the ground vis-a-vis Egypt.
I think too, just taking a look at the global chessboard here, another example of the tide change. Take a country like Qatar, an ally of the United States, used to have ties with Israel. Now leaders there are saying they're supporting Hamas in this conflict. Talk, Paula, about the bigger picture here, not just dealing with, Egypt, Israel, and Gaza, but there are several other countries that are sort of giving clues that this is, in fact, a very different battle this time around.
Well, it certainly is a very different battle this time around. If you look at Qatar, for instance, earlier this month, the Emir of Qatar was in Gaza, where he pledged some $400 million to social projects there. He has also been in Egypt, where he's been meeting with the Egyptian president, and he too is trying to play a role in these mediation efforts. What I think is happening as far as Qatar is concerned, and certainly this is an analysis that's backed up by me talking to political analysts who deal with the situation, is that it's trying to present itself as the big brother of the Arab world. You have Qatar trying now to play a leading role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as well as in the conflict in Syria. And certainly from the sense on the ground I get is that Qatar did lose a lot of face, particularly with its broadcasting of the Arab Spring through a channel like Al Jazeera. I mean, many people say that the revolution in Egypt would not have happened if it wasn't for Al Jazeera. And so you have a country like Qatar needing to re-establish itself in the Arab world, and certainly that is what it's trying to do now, at least in this example, vis-a-vis the Israeli-Gaza conflict. But this is a region that has changed, and changed significantly in the last 4 years. It's not going to be a region that is immune to changes. It's a region that Israel is having to adapt to. It has its neighboring countries with new leadership, with potentially new leaderships, and the Israelis too are very concerned about this.
Yeah, certainly some major concerns on both sides. Everyone keeping their eye on that region. Thanks for your reporting, RT International correspondent Paula.